Welcome to the Barnstable School Committee meeting for September 6, 2023. I'll start off with 1.1, District Vision and Core Values. District Vision. The Barnstable Public Schools educates the whole child by creating a student-centered school culture that addresses students' physical, social, emotional, and academic needs by creating a safe and healthy learning environment in which students are challenged, supported, and engaged. Core Values. In Barnstable Public Schools, we value commitment, collaboration, and community. Commitment. We are dedicated to the continuous learning and growth for all. Collaboration. We work together while keeping students' needs at the center of all decision-making. Community. We build strong, respectful partnerships that support student success. Moving on to 1.2, statement by the chair, video or audio recording of meeting. This school committee meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. Seeing nobody. Moving on to 2.1. Highlights in education. 2.1, introduction of new administrators to the Barnstable Public Schools. Sarah.
Thank you. We're joined this evening by several of our new administrators to the Barnstable Public Schools. We have 4 new assistant principals who will come forward. 3 are at our K-3 buildings, and 1 is at Barnstable United Elementary School, so I'd invite them to come up.
Welcome.
Welcome. They're going to introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about their time so far in Barnstable, and a little bit about why they're here and how it's going.
So I guess I'm inadvertently alphabetically first here. But I am Katie Beebe. I am the new assistant principal over at BWB Elementary. I've been in Barnstable for over 20 years. I started off as a PCA over at Centerville, and then was a school counselor over at BUE for many years, and then over at BWB for the last 5 years. So I'm thrilled to be an assistant principal now, just a nice change of pace a little bit of what I've been doing, and just working within the school in a different capacity has been great so far. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, alphabetically, I'm not next, but I went next. My name is Darnielle Foley. I'm the new assistant principal over at Centerville Elementary School. I was previously in Falmouth. I've been an educator for 22 years. I love the school that I'm at. I'm so glad I was able to join their team. It's fantastic, and I feel like that's really where I belong. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tricia Flint, and I am very honored and excited to be the very first assistant principal at Barnstable Community Innovation School. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And I just wanted to share that some of my excitement about being at BCIS, I think, comes from the work that we're doing with the MTSS Tiered Literacy Grant around the science of reading, and in looking at our diverse community population. These things align with so much of the doctoral work that I did in Texas, so I have a lot of excitement about continuing those things in the field. And the other part of my excitement is because Kathy Milne, the principal, and the staff have been very welcoming and supportive. Kathy has been a great example of professionalism and the BPIS way. She's been great at stopping and training and teaching me everything, and I'm really excited about everything that I'm going to continue to learn from her example. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Umla, the new 5th grade assistant principal at Barnstable United Elementary. Real quickly, my journey in education, this is year 17. I'm born and raised in North Conway, New Hampshire, so kind of like similar to the tourist thing. I get after Labor Day weekend, we say goodbye to everyone, you know, the traffic.
Yep.
I taught for 6 years down in Manatee County, Florida in public schools, and then my last 7 years I've been in Malden public schools. My wife is from Falmouth. I am honored and so happy to have my 3-year-old down here on the Cape, and I really just hope I can be a positive part of this community for a long time. I have to mention how great Dr. Smith, Mr. Wachkowski, and then even bigger umbrella, everybody at the BDLT conference that we had. These were admin that were reaching out and saying what a great district it is, giving a helping hand and suggestions wherever they could. So I'm really, really excited and feel welcomed and honored to be here.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. We also have two new department heads. One department head and a curriculum coordinator joining us. They are familiar faces here in Barnstable, but taking on new roles. While they come to the front, I will also note that Erin Eastman is now not the interim guidance department head, but she is guidance department head at Barnstable High School. She couldn't be here this evening, but I did want to mention that she is one of our new members of the team. So I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure.
Hi,
hi all.
welcome.
I'm Cody Small. I've been in Barnstable for 8 years now, but actually my journey is much longer than that because I actually went to school here. I'm a proud Barnstable graduate, and actually my little brother enrolled yesterday for his first day at West Villages. What was MME when I was here.
Yep.
But I am starting as the World Language Department head, so I will be coming back when we are ready to do some trips.
The trips.
Yeah.
Yep. You're our
Very
new
soon.
contact person. Welcome.
Yeah, so I'm super excited for that. But yeah, I'm just excited to get some fresh ideas flowing. I'm replacing the formidable Grace Lytle, so we have a lot of fresh ideas coming.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Welch. I'm starting my 30th year in the
Wow.
Barnstable Public Schools. I know, can you believe it? Yes, Kristen and I started together. So I taught English at Barnstable High School for 29 years, and 11 of those were doing literacy after I did a master's in reading. I've raised my children here. My sons are graduates of Barnstable High School. Very proud to work in Barnstable. And I'm looking forward to being the English curriculum coordinator and working with literacy and bridging K through 12. So,
Cool. Excellent. Congratulations. Well,
thank you.
Thank you all for being here and for the support from the principals who are here as well. And we had a great Leadership Institute and really welcome them to our team.
excellent. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. Thank you. Moving on to 3.1, approve school committee meeting minutes for August 2nd, 2023.
Move to approve the school committee meeting minutes of August 2nd, 2023.
I'll second.
Having a motion second and voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. 3.2, public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and 30 minutes total. There will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. The committee will take items under advisement, or the individual will request an item be placed on a future agenda. The chair will also allow public comment at his discretion during the meeting. Having said that, I will now open up public comment. Do you want to come up for public comment? Or are you all set? It's up to you. You're all set? Okay, so you're all set? Okay, cool. Seeing nobody else, I will close public comment. We will now move on to 3.3, school committee comments and subcommittee liaison reports. I'll open it up to everybody.
Sure.
Peter?
Yeah, I have very little report except a welcome back to all of our students and faculty. Hopefully all went smooth getting back to school, and now there's less than 180 days to go, so.
Only 176, I think.
Okay, good.
The clock has started down.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the right time or not to dip into this subject, but since I have the mic, I've been noticing that COVID's creeping back into the news with an uptick of cases, and I believe Barnstable Public Schools recently sent out some information on COVID. And I just want people to know that if it ever came to a vote of the Barnstable School Committee, I would vote resounding no to any mandate to require masks in school. I just believe we did significant harm during COVID a few years back to our students between online learning and mask mandates, and so it's a definite no for me. And I just needed to get that off my chest as I hear things popping up in the news, so I feel better about that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that's it.
Kathy?
So I have some subcommittee updates. First of all, the policy subcommittee met on August 18th, and the great news is we have completed the policy manual review. We finished.
No, you didn't. You can't be done
It's
yet.
never done.
See, there's the caveat, but.
It's never done. Section J is on the agenda tonight for a second read and hopefully approval. Sections K and L are on the agenda as a first read. All the policies that are related to special education were forwarded to CPAC to gain additional input. And we have a meeting scheduled on September 22nd at 1 p.m. To review all the feedback that we get. And if changes need to be made, we'll make more changes. The last piece of it is to make sure that my job is to go through the March policy update that came from MASC. I glanced at it over the weekend before this meeting. I believe we've already dealt with the majority of what's in that. It's about 4-page document, but I will go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We felt that it was easier to get all the policies approved and published and up there because the significant changes have been made. And Peter, would you? Okay. So Peter's glad.
Yeah, and you
all
were,
glad.
yeah, Kathy's the star of that committee by far.
All right. Collaborative Board. First meeting of the Cape Cod Collaborative Board is next Wednesday, September 13th. We meet the second Wednesday of every month. The one thing that I do want to report is that Waypoint had moved from Sandwich to Yarmouth at the end of last school year, and they're fully transitioned into the Yarmouth building. So that's the big change that happened. Subcommittee for the School Attorney Review met on August 17 and earlier this evening. The evaluation was provided and goals were set to recommend to the school committee at next month's meeting. The subcommittee for an RFP for outside legal firms met August 17th, and we reviewed a draft, which is now being additionally reviewed by procurement and adding the town requirements by procurement before we get one last look at it, and then the RFP will be posted. So those two committees should be wrapping up.
You kind of took my thunder. I was the chair of those two subcommittees, and you just kept going.
Oh, I didn't know we had a chair, so I just was
That's okay.
reporting on what I
I'm just kidding.
had there.
Let me just, you all set? You all done?
I also want to welcome all people back to the district. It's a community. Everybody is, that I've seen and heard from, is excited to be back. The bus stop people look like they're happy in my neighborhood. That's always a plus. And I haven't run over any children there. Another plus, right. So it's fun to see them now that I don't have any little ones. I love seeing the bus stop people. And that's it.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity I ribbed Kathy about her policy subcommittee that's been going on for 3 years. And the amount of work that Kathy has done, and Peter's been on it for the last couple of years, is just unbelievable. Honestly, like the townspeople don't understand, and our employees, just that policy book, it was daunting. It hadn't been done in years. And Kathy was like, I'll take that. I think I could do that subcommittee. And I don't even think you realized how
It would
much
take another 3 years if it wasn't for Kathy.
Yeah,
in all
it
seriousness.
was just amazing, the amount of work and dedication that Kathy has put in over the last 3 years, and constantly, no matter how busy she was, she still, everybody who was on that subcommittee has talked to me over the years and been like, wow, she is unbelievable how meticulous she is, how professionally she is. She brings in the people that needs to be brought in when they need to be brought in to have the experts talk about it. Honestly, Kathy, I truly appreciate it. And as the chair of the school committee, thank you, honestly, more than that is like the work that gets done behind the scenes that is literally thankless, and you did it with absolute dedication. So thank you for tackling that and staying true to the end. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you for the kudos, and I'm glad it's done. But it was good to do.
Well, it was just there's a lot of stuff that you found that like we didn't realize that we had two policies that were kind of in conflict with each other, or it just got cleaned up. It got added. Stuff got added. It was an absolute fantastic job. So honestly, thank you very much for doing that. I also would like to welcome everybody back for another school year. staff and students. It seems to have gone off the first couple days relatively good. I also would like to remind all of the citizens of Barnstable, not just Barnstable, all over the country and world, but especially in Barnstable, we do have bus stops. We do have buses. One of my huge pet peeves, my kids are all older now, but one of my huge pet peeves is running the red lights of a bus. Nobody wakes up that morning and wants to hit a kid. So you know what, you need to drive accordingly, and I know we're all late for school, we're late to get kids to places, I understand it, we're all part of that. You know what, do me a favor and leave 5 minutes earlier, because, and as I always tell, I teach kids how to drive, I'm a student driving instructor, and I always tell kids, you know the one thing that, a fire truck, I'm a retired firefighter paramedic, a fire truck with their lights in it, or an ambulance with their lights going, cannot go through a bus's red lights. So here I am in a fire truck or an ambulance with my lights going and all of the stuff I can do. The law states is I cannot do is go around or go by a bus with their lights on. So if the firefighters and the police officers can't do it, there is no reason a person in a normal car should be doing that. It's kind of me being on my soapbox. I do it every year. But please, I live right off of 28, and I can't tell you how many times my kids almost got hit as they were walking out, and somebody and still to this day, I hear the horn. Every time a car goes through red lights, I hear the horn. I think there's like 6 or 7 bus stops out in front of my house. And in the last, 4 days of school, I've already heard the horn go off several times. That's unconscionable, and it has to stop, period. Having said that, I will get off my soapbox, and I will turn it over to Andre.
Thank you, Mike. Have my slides that thanks so much, Mo. I want to echo the sentiment of my colleagues in terms of a new school year and a new journey. It's always wistful at the beginning. I will be involved. I'm always involved, but this year, as I take a step back from the classroom to work locally, I think it's going to open up some time for me to be very active in my home district, and I'm looking forward to that and some of the things that we've already seen. But for those students, families, educators, we just saw a number of administrators. It was good to see we have a new administrator from Texas. And I didn't get a chance, and I'm sure we'll cross paths, but I had to ask, are we UT or Texas A&M? That's a question that we'll get to, and I'm going to lean whichever way she leans, because I know that's quite serious. University of Texas, good program, but we all a number of good schools. So in terms of, yes, Barnstable, it's a diverse, and it's a dynamic district, even over the summer months. So to start us off, we had donations from the Family and Community Engagement Center at Barnstable United Elementary. So happy to get those donations. BUES, it's probably the biggest step in the district, I would say, coming from the elementary schools, which where we all kind of unite together. That's a transition that we're quite focused on. It's good that we're going to have we're going to have an additional assistant principal there to support that building. So again, donations from the Family and Community Engagement Center at BUES. This, I have to go to my notes because this took place on August 16th. Barnstable Public Schools, again, Family and Community Engagement Center, partnered with the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment, Cape Cod Collaborative Extension, and the Hyannis Fire Department to provide a fresh produce distribution from Capabilities Farm, a vaccine catch-up clinic, and a social services fair, including Amplify POC, great people at that organization, Y Achievers, more great people, WIC, WIC, I'm not sure what that acronym stands for. I apologize in advance, but I will get on that. And the Cape Cod Family Resource Center and Health Ministry. So this is a great opportunity for families to receive fresh produce, such as green beans, lettuce, carrots, onions, blueberries, and more. I'm loving this. Organic, healthy. I should have been, I'm going to make an effort to, I should have been there myself. So we saw this just tremendous, had the whole facility and all of the different produce. And so this took place mid-August 16th. And again, fresh food, healthy food for the folks in our district. We had talked about the beginning of the school year. This was good to see. We saw just now our new administrators. These are our new educators who are going to be in the classroom, led by our chief educator, Dr. Sarah Ahern, and this was nice to see. And then convocation, which is always a great event, bringing the whole district together. We are a large district, well over 700 educators, all in one place, getting that unified vision and the sense of camaraderie. So by all accounts, I see Mr. Bird there. I saw him yesterday at the soccer game. Barnstable did well against Brockton. We lost 3-2, but we had a good showing against Brockton yesterday. But anyway, this was convocation. For the opening of school, as many have alluded to, we had a number of community members. Town manager Mark Els was there, State Representative Kip Diggs, obviously Principal Liz Friedman, and this is Jason Gordine, along with our school resource officer. Jason Gordine is a member of People of Action who will be pioneering a mentorship program that we're excited about at the high school and also the intermediate school. Continuing on, Town Council President Matt Levesque there for the beginning of school, along with our teachers and educators. And the gentleman who was taking the pictures, Representative Steven Ziaros, taking the pictures, had to get himself in. We see Officer Morrison, we see Cape and Islands District Attorney Rob Galaboys, members, People of Action, David Adams, 1996 Barnstable High School graduate, won the state championship in football that year, and so it was great to see all hands on deck. And of course, what it's all about as we begin school is the students getting off on their journey, which is going to be a successful journey, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andre. Moving on to 3.4, student superintendent's report. Sarah.
Thank you. So continuing with the theme of the opening of the year, I've got a number of things to share with the committee and the community. But first, first, I want to thank everybody for a great start to the school year. I especially want to thank those who toil over the summer to close one school year and begin one anew. And so that's going to include our year-round administrative assistants, our administrators, the transportation department, our facilities staff, including maintenance and custodians, our food services department, and the employees at the school administration building. There are always a few kinks to work out at the beginning of the year, and we always hope they're minor. We appreciate everyone's patience as we work through those, and I appreciate some of those safety reminders, particularly when we're talking about traffic patterns in and around town. We've talked a little bit about the Summer Leadership Institute. We had about 50 people on the Barnstable District Leadership Team convene for 3 days in early August. The time included reconnecting with our draft vision of a graduate. We had team learning and input on the direction of the district improvement plan, the goals of which you'll see this evening. We had some team building focused on leadership styles, as well as deepening our concepts of belonging, and several workshops that began to address initiatives in the district improvement plan, including addressing bullying, discrimination, and harassment, a refresher on school safety practices with our community partners in the police department and fire departments, supporting students with special needs and our multilingual learners, and educator evaluation. And as I reflect on the time of this Leadership Institute, last year when I came in new, much of the Institute I ran as the new superintendent, and I really appreciated sharing the leadership with colleagues like our directors of special education, our assistant superintendent, our director of multilingual learners, to bring the Leadership Institute to this larger team. Andre, I appreciate you sharing a picture of convocation to kind of capture the spirit as we welcomed back our faculty and staff. Convocation was something that had happened previously in the district and took a hiatus during COVID, but it's wonderful to bring everybody back together. And this was our second one in recent times. It's always such a positive atmosphere and wonderful to see everybody connect. I do get the sense that the staff appreciates connecting with each other, especially from across different buildings. We had remarks from Brooke Steich, the FEA president, school committee chair Mike Judge, and town manager Mark Els. They joined me in making those welcoming remarks. We recognized a multitude of educators who marked major milestones in longevity. We heard about two of them this evening with Laura and Kristen hitting 30 years. But it is a time to celebrate those who have committed many years to the district. And it's remarkable to see how many talented educators stand to be recognized at the various milestones. And we welcomed new staff and new administrators. We've made strides in our staffing for this school year. I think we've done very, very well in terms of staffing. We do have some perennial changes that are persisting in some key areas, in particular bus drivers and paraprofessionals, which we had seen in previous years. We do have enough bus drivers to cover all of the routes, but it's tight, and would expect that some of our leadership in the transportation department might have to pick up routes if there's absences, for example. So we will continue to recruit in those areas, and then unique specialties are also another challenge where we are continuing to recruit, namely for speech and language pathologists and school psychologists. When we get to the district improvement plan, it's going to emphasize goal 3 around talent development and making sure that we are being creative and also providing supports to those who want to grow into the profession. I know that the committee is often interested to know about staffing departures, and I have a little bit of data to share with you this evening. I don't have a slide, but the Human Resources Department did share information with me as of September 1st. This includes staff members in a multitude of roles, so it's not just teaching roles, it also includes facilities departments, administrative assistants, paraprofessionals, and licensed educators. But we had 57 departures as of September 1st. We had 10 individuals who were not reappointed for one reason or another. It could have been a result of their appointment being a one-year appointment, and so it was intentional. It could have been a license issue, or it could have been for performance. We had 22 educators retire. Again, this is not just licensed educators. This would be educators from across the district, but 22 retirements. And I know that the number that I think is of biggest interest, perhaps, is the number who voluntarily left their service in the Barnstable Public Schools, and that number is 24. Most individuals do not provide a reason to us. We did have several, about half who did. We have career changers, people pursuing graduate school, medical reasons, or other personal reasons. 8 cited, the pattern that I guess I want to emphasize among all of this data is that 8 cited that they were taking on new positions, and a pattern there included seeking a shorter commute. So many of the educators were coming from off Cape, over the bridge, from places like Wareham, New Bedford, Plymouth, and were seeking a shorter commute, and so got positions that were closer to home. So that's just something I think for us to be mindful of as part of our recruitment and retention efforts. In terms of student enrollment, it's a little premature to talk too detailed about that. There's a lot of dynamic things that happen in the month of September with students arriving and some students withdrawing. But preliminary numbers look very, very similar to last year, where we're hovering around 4,900 students. But we'll have much more accuracy after October 1st comes, and at the October meeting, I can share some more updated information with you about our students for the 23-24 school year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the report? Seeing none? Okay. Moving on to, I flipped the page. Moving on to 3.5 Assistant Superintendent Report. Kristen.
Thank you. All right, so I wanted to just share with you, we've already had some conversations about our new educators. So our new educator orientation, we welcomed close to 50 new educators to Barnstable Public Schools. This was on August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. We had a picture that we saw there. Over the course of the 3 days, we introduced new staff to Barnstable, to our vision, our priorities, our programs. New educators learned about our English learners, our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, social emotional learning. They learned about our mentor program and our commitment to talent development and teacher diversification. New educators also had a day of technology training, and a half day on day 3, they had the opportunity to go to their home schools for a school-based orientation. all with the goal of having our new educators feel well prepared for the start of the school year. So who are our new educators, you might ask? So just to give you a little bit of an insight into some of the staff that we're getting coming into our buildings, just looking at licensure. We have a 28, oh God, I can't even read, 26.7% are coming in with professional licenses, but then you can see we have 33% under initial licenses, 24% under emergency licenses. We have a small number of emergency extensions, and a small number of temporary licenses. Those are typically people coming from out of state, and then 11% provisional licenses. So really looking at, we have different needs of our staff coming in, all in different areas of licensure. Similarly, looking at their prior experience in an educational school setting, we have 53% are experienced but new to the district. So again, how do we support them and their various needs? We had 28, almost 29% in their first year of teaching, 11% in the third year of teaching, and I should be able to do the math really quickly, but, and we have a sliver of second year in teaching. And then really this is the heart of this. I'm gathering this information from our new educators really for the purpose of identifying mentor needs, because that's one of the things that we want, again, as we are looking to support our new educators. What are their mentoring needs? Do they need a full year of mentoring? Do they need a half year of mentoring? And so that's based both on their licensure, prior mentoring experience, years of experience. And some of this is related to licensure requirements, the need to demonstrate having been mentored, participated in mentor induction, so that they can get to their professional license. But it's also obviously a best practice, but this is just some of our information we gather. So we have a large number, 60%, who have not participated in an induction mentor program. So some have been mentored outside of Massachusetts. So, we do have some of the veteran staff, but Massachusetts says, nope, you need to be in a mentor induction program in Massachusetts. So this helps us to identify how we're going to assign mentors to our staff. So I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of the who were in front of us. I know in the past I've shared one of probably my highlights personally is as one of our activities, we do a 6-word story, and I always ask them on day 2 to, use your creativity, because they're very creative, of a 6-word story of how they're feeling or how they're thinking about the new school year. And so I just wanted to share this. Hopefully you can read some of them, but it never ceases to amaze me, and it just validates all of the work. And there is one in particular that I highlighted to the group, and that I will highlight for you, that I put right in the middle, because I just felt the same way, that I am grateful for everyone here, because the group just gelled. It was just such an incredible experience to work with this group. So I'll give you a minute to read through some of those, and I can share this separately as well. And I give them, they do this in less than 5 minutes. It's the end, it's their exit ticket, and so they want to get out of there. But they come up with this. And so it just really, it always just amazes me. And, I think everyone can relate to all, a whole host of these. Summer's over, but it's okay, so they really capture a lot of the feelings in the room. And again, they just, the connections that they made. We changed seats every day, and they kind of went back to the people that they connected with the first day, but then the next day they were newly connected. It was just a really neat dynamic this year. And then just so you can have some faces with all of these wonderful words, this was our final day. We had a our closing picture before they headed off to their home schools. And again, just a wonderful group to work with, and I'm looking forward to working with them over the course of the year through our mentor program and our monthly meetings with the mentors. And I guess I will add, just continuing with new educator orientation, as you heard from the superintendent's report, we are still hiring. We have also, there's been a number of staff who have been brought in since we held new educator orientation. It is important, I think, for staff to be grounded in this. And so we will be we're going to be holding a modified new educator orientation. We actually videotaped the presentations so that there'll be an asynchronous portion, and then we're looking to possibly use October 6th, our full day in service day, to have a second stage orientation for the staff, for our incoming new educators through that time. We also, as you saw from earlier at the start, we had new administrator orientation during the same week. That was on Monday, August 21st. It was a one-day orientation for our new administrators who you met earlier. And as you heard tonight, this group includes assistant principals, department heads, a curriculum coordinator. I'm really excited that with this group, we'll be continuing to work together with monthly meetings to dig deeper into key topics that were presented to the group on our orientation, and to expand our conversations to include topics that they identify as we progress through the year. And again, it's another group that really seemed to come together so well through the orientation program. And then finally, just as a reminder, next week, Wednesday, September 13th, is a half day for students while staff participate in a range of professional development activities in the afternoon. So just for planning purposes, a reminder to people, and I can't remember when our October meeting is, so I'll put a plug for our full day in service, which is October 6th. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions? Kathy?
No, I don't have a question, but Kristen, I really appreciate the additional information. This is the most information we've received since I've been on school committee about the composition of the new hires. I'm pleased to see we have so many first-year teachers. It's a good sign that young people are still interested in education, because it was a difficult 4 years for them. So I think that's great. It looks like a nice mix of new people to our district. So I appreciate that, and I enjoyed hearing that much.
Excellent.
Yeah, just to add on to Kathy's point, I like the blend of educators with professional and also initial licenses and also provisional licenses. A lot of times when you think of new educators, you're thinking of folks 22 years old, wet behind the ears, just out of school, full of idealism, ready to take on the world. But to Sarah's point, in terms of sometimes the pressures that professionals face, i.e. the commute, where you're coming from and that distance that you have to travel, or just wanting a change of pace. A new educator can be a seasoned educator. That professional license, you've been in the game at least 3 years, if not more. And so, you're going to bring something different to the table. So that was quite helpful. And I like, it is the last 5 minutes, and it is, their exit ticket, in terms of their statements. But we certainly need to hold on to those things over the course of the journey. That enthusiasm that you have. I saw a little bit of nervous, tired, and you overwhelmed. Yes, that's how you're going to feel. But you're going to figure it out, and you're going to do a good job. That's to be remembered as well. So those sentiments, as people get going on a journey, even if it is your first, 15th, or whatever, you're going to need to refer back to that, particularly in January and February as the year moves along.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.1, approve school committee policy in section J, students. Kathy?
So this is the second read. I've received no feedback. Peter? Nope. So
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve school committee policies in Section J, students as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second that.
Having a motion seconded, is voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 5.1, District Improvement Plan. Sarah?
Thank you. So as we do annually, I bring forward district goals for the year. And I have prepared it in a brief presentation for you and for the community. I don't think that there will be any surprises here. These goals are framed around the outcomes from my entry plan last year and the major themes that emerged. And many of the initiatives that are under each of these goals are framed around things that we talked about during budget development and we've been talking about already this evening. We ground our district improvement plan in vision and core values, which the chairperson read and reads at the beginning of each meeting. I did also lead our convocation with our vision and core values, as well as our Leadership Institute. Oops, sorry about that. We also ground in the big ideas of our vision of a graduate, which is in draft form. But we are working with it as a working draft while we put it out to the community for additional feedback. We have received feedback from educators at the May Professional Development Day, and this fall we'll look for feedback on these areas from our students, from our families, and from community members. But it does, we are starting to operationalize it and think about ways in which this can become tangible and alive in our classrooms. I'm going to go quickly through these just to get to the plan, but you have them for reference. And our next steps on refining the vision of a graduate, as I had mentioned, is to get that feedback, iterate it into a second draft, and bring it back to this committee to finalize it and develop a graphical representation. So the district improvement plan is centered around 4 big ideas, 4 strategic objectives. These, as I mentioned, came directly from the findings of my entry plan last year. And I would anticipate, with your support and with your approval, that these objectives are multi-year objectives. So this part of the plan would not really change in the near future. These will be areas that we continue to work on. And then within each of these areas, there are initiatives that might be one-year initiatives, or they could be multi-year initiatives, depending upon their nature. But the first objective is around creating a culture of belonging, a safe and inclusive climate, and a shared vision of student success. It came out loud and clear last year how much people wanted to feel like part of something larger, people feeling pretty separate and isolated across the district. And we've been working towards that shared vision since. The second strategic objective around a rigorous curriculum and effective engaging instruction that is aligned with the vision of a graduate. This is the instructional core, and I can't imagine a district improvement plan that doesn't focus on curriculum and instruction. We've identified the need for talent development to recruit, retain, and develop a skilled, engaged, and diverse workforce to meet contemporary student learning needs. The data, I think, is incredibly helpful in terms of framing our work here, as well as identifying those contemporary student learning needs. They've really become more varied and more diverse, and so we're seeing more specialization and additional positions in schools that we haven't seen in the past. And then facilities development is a huge rock that we need to confront and work on in terms of providing equitable school facilities that enable each student's development of the skills of our vision of a graduate. And within each strategic objective, we'll be examining this for data to make sure that students have equitable opportunities to achieve the vision's skills. So in the first objective, the strategic initiatives are listed. These first 2 I anticipate being 1 year. So we'll complete the vision of a graduate this year, and then in future years look to implement it in all that we do, is what we say, our systems, our policies, and our practices. Would like to initiate and hopefully complete by the end of the year the vision of a Barnstable educator that aligns with the vision of a graduate. That will help us with our recruitment strategies. It will also help us define professional development. We have an opportunity, this is tied to the second objective as well, but do some climate and culture surveying and develop some baseline data. The BTA has done a climate and culture survey annually of staff, but I would like to expand upon that, collecting climate and culture data for staff, for families, and for students. There is a grant opportunity to do so at the high school, and I think it would be an oversight, a huge oversight, to not expand that across the entire district. We are working to reaffirm and communicate our practices in the area of addressing bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Some of that comes from data from the entry plan around how students are feeling, as well as some opportunities that we in central office had identified in terms of improving our practices there. We've done a lot of work in the past year in terms of student discipline and responding to student behavior, developing more consistent practices, and I think there's continued work to calibrate on those under Mary Beth Shea's leadership, pre-K through 12. We are continuing to take advantage, and I think it's incredibly important that we do so, to develop and enhance wraparound services for students. That includes supporting the pilot of the Red Hawks Food Pantry, which launched in May, but operationalizing it and making sure that it's sustainable. We have professional development from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. That is an opportunity for both our staff and for families to engage in workshops together around family engagement. And Mara Bunshu is leading this work and looking to pilot it at BCIS and Hyannis West this year. And also Mary Beth Shea from her office as Executive Director of SEL and Student Services, looking to enhance behavioral health supports with community resources and agencies, the Hope Squad being kind of an initial one that involves students that we're looking forward to seeing and implementing for the first time this year. We are taking an opportunity to collaborate more with families and community organizations to support student success. I would point to the superintendent's working group around special education in collaboration with CPAC. We have also launched an LPAC last year and look to foster its success, as well as a multitude of additional organizations that we can benefit from, including the Barnstable County Human Rights Advisory Commission. We convened a group of superintendents this summer to talk about how we can work more closely with them. And reinforcing and enhancing school safety practices with our school partners. Had talked about refreshing that this summer with the police department and the fire departments, and building upon the multi-agency training that happened on April 7th to involve more school department members in that regard. And I've asked our principals to include goals in their school improvement plans that align with this strategic objective. In terms of rigorous curriculum and engaging effective instruction, we have a grant that you've heard a lot about. You were part of the review before we put it forward to the Department of Education, called GLEAM, Growing Literacy Equity Across Massachusetts, where educators K through 5 will be evaluating and field testing literacy materials. This is intentionally inclusive of families as well as our educators. And we are also making sure that special education and our multilingual learners department is involved in all aspects of this as we think about literacy across all of our students. The high schools engaged in a grant through the Barr Foundation, which we had mentioned at the July meeting, called Meeting the Moment, very closely aligned with the vision of a graduate, and also has some, it's distinct from the NEASC process, but it's not inconsistent with NEASC in terms of redefining the student learning experience at BHS for all students. I do see application across the district for this as we think with the end in mind about what our graduates need, how we can build the high school experience backwards and think about all of the experiences students have pre-K up until grade 7 as they matriculate into the high school. We have long talked about our MTSS model, but I think there is a need and an opportunity to kind of commit to our MTSS model on paper, identify what gaps might exist in our MTSS model, and figure out a strategy around closing those gaps. We will continue to work on curriculum review and development. That is something that was initiated last year under Kristen Harmon's leadership, but with our district leadership team continuing to document with the Atlas software our curriculum, and while doing so, keeping the vision of a graduate in mind. In terms of special education, we review special education programs on a regular basis, and this year we will be reviewing, we have a consultant working with us on ILC, NEC, and transition programs, and we'll be implementing support for the Crossroads program across the entire district based on last year's report from that consultant. And again, I asked our principals to include goals in this area related to curriculum and instruction in their school improvement plans. In terms of talent development, we're going to continue our efforts on recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce by establishing a district-wide task force focused on this goal area. In the past 2 years, we had a cohort, 2 different cohorts working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's professional learning community around this initiative. And I think it's time we take it away from the learning community with the department and work internally as a committee to develop a strategic plan around recruitment, retention, and growth. Some of the efforts are already underway. I think some of the changes that you see Kristen putting in place in terms of mentoring and induction are a really good example. And some of our recruitment efforts that we did last spring, but it would be to kind of codify that more formally. Creating more formal career ladders to support growth of new practitioners. You saw the number of educators or the percentage of educators with emergency or provisional licenses. They're going to require some additional support to progress in their licensure. But we also have a number of aspiring educators who may be paraprofessionals or employed elsewhere in the school system. And providing them with some career ladders are great opportunities. This might also include members of our Brazilian community who seek to be teachers. They may be licensed educators in Brazil, for example, and with some support may be the next Barnstable Public School educator. And then as an outcome here as well, district professional development plan and model based on our vision of a Barnstable educator. These, I imagine, are going to be ongoing or multi-year goals. I didn't say that for the second objective. I'm sorry about that. And then more detail related to school facilities. We have invested, and I think wisely so, in a couple of key data gathering efforts with the enrollment forecast, the facilities conditions assessment, and later tonight you'll hear the capacity assessment preliminary report so that we can then take this information and plan for equitable facilities based on space that we have, our space needs, and also the adequacy of our space towards our vision of a graduate. We have a number of capital improvement projects that have been suggested, so coming up with key priorities there. In the short term, space mining for short-term facilities gains are things that we have talked about and you'll hear a little bit more about tonight. And then I think a need for longer-term facilities planning given the age of our facilities, as well as our anticipated stable enrollment in terms of numbers, but I think growing diversity will continue. That continues to be a trend. So I'd be happy to take questions or comments.
Any questions? Andre?
Yes, Sarah, thank you for that presentation. It's quite informative across a number of areas. In terms of facilities, a question that came to my mind, and I was talking with an educator from Hyannis West yesterday, is the portables at Hyannis West and Barnstable Community Innovation School. What's the timeline for those?
Sure. So right now, we have a contract in the works. The parties are agreeing to the final terms of that language. And then once that contract gets solidified, we'll have the portables designed and then installed within the next several months. So we don't have a definitive time frame just yet. Some of it does depend on when the contract gets signed, but we anticipate active development on that this fall into early winter.
Thank you. Second question, something that I saw that caught my eye just a little bit further. You know, I liked the way that it was framed, defining the moment, taking a second look at Barnstable High School and what success looks like for our students at the high school. Could you talk a little bit further about that?
Sure. So that's meeting the moment, and meeting the moment by the Bar Foundation is framed in a couple of different ways. One is based on kind of the current time that we live in, one that is changing incredibly rapidly. We also know that there are finite resources, and so a need to kind of an opportunity to fundamentally rethink the way we do things in order to maximize efficient use of those resources. There is an element, I would say, too, in terms of kind of where we are socially, and coming out of COVID with a lot of broken belongings and kind of disconnectedness. How are we sort of rising to the occasion and meeting the moment to make sure that we're serving each and every one of our students well?
No, thank you. Because you started in terms of your strategic plan, looking at a culture of belonging. And I think that's a prudent start, because I do feel that there is a sense of isolation that people have in a world that's saturated with alleged social media, all these alleged connections, but yet people feel isolated, people feel lonely, people feel anxious, and then specifically coming out of the pandemic, okay, and so then how can they learn the Pythagorean theorem? No, they're not going to be able to do that. They have to first be made to feel comfortable, made to be feel encouraged, so on and forth. So, and then specifically that the high school, that's our largest building, clearly, and a lot of the feedback that we get at the committee level comes from the high school, it being the largest building, kind of a hub for the overall community. And so that idea of meeting the moment, recognizing, that just it's a large, diverse school, and so education is going to look different. It is. That's just a fact. And then these extenuating circumstances, i.e. the pandemic. But I just, I think it's well placed, you putting a sense of belonging at the top of your strategic objectives, because that social isolation, that's a real thing across all society, and specifically in education, you're not going to be able to get to those further goals if you don't kind of look at these underlying aspects, and we have to first admit that they're there, before we can address them and move forward.
Sarah, there's a lot of good stuff in that presentation for sure, and I just highlighted a couple that I was glad to see. The emphasis on a rigorous curriculum pleased me, as well as the idea of the district-wide task force for recruiting our workplace. I think that's the best idea for getting a workforce for the future. I think we got to do it ourselves, so I like that very much.
Thanks.
Kathy, you have anything? No?
I don't have much to add that Andre and Peter have already mentioned. I do believe that a lot of the families, now that we're coming out of the tough previous couple of years, are looking for that boost in the curriculum and in the accountability of the students, so that their gains are real gains and they're able to be successful whatever they choose to do when they leave. So I'm happy to see that part in there as well.
Thanks.
Excellent. And I ditto to everything they said. Excellent job. Thank you very much. You showed this at the convocation. This is kind of the convocation. This was that
So I did share this with
Yeah,
our
this,
staff.
because I
at
was like, wait a minute, I've
Convocation.
seen
Yep.
this.
And I shared it with the district leadership team at the Leadership Institute as well. And I think there's been a little, based on input and feedback from people, some tweaks here and there, but not too terribly much. These are things that we've really been talking about for some time.
Really, the last, yeah.
And I even think back to sort of the interview process and
Right.
and your questions and things that were important to you reflected from the community, facilities, talent development, curriculum. These are themes that are like, these are our big ideas. These are our big rocks and things that we need to be working on for several years. So the initiatives will sort of rotate in, come and go, but I see those objectives as being pretty stable with your approval and support for some time.
Okay, thank you. I got one question, and Kristen, I should have asked you when you did your report. I know you gave the statistics and about new educators and stuff. I don't know if there's a way to know. Do you know how many of them like graduated from or were Barnstable residents before, came back? We'll say after college. Like I'm just because we talk about in-house development, talent, and stuff, and I'm wondering. I mean, we've just kind of started talking about that and kind of really kind of honing in on that and stuff. I was just curious if it's kind of paid dividends yet or not yet. I mean, I don't know how you would find out. And it's not even graduate from Barnstable because they might not have gone to Barnstable. They might have school choices somewhere else. But like somebody who not even grew up in Barnstable but grew up at DY or Yarmouth or Mashpee or like they're still a Cape kid, you know what I mean? So I was just curious if there's a way of knowing like how many are homegrown as we talked about.
And absolutely, so it completely anecdotal just from an
Right, well, and
activity
I
that
know
we
you
did.
probably
There'll
can't-
be a handful, but the data that I shared, as part of the invitation to the orientation, they completed a survey. So that's data that they shared with me. So we could ask other questions like, did you grow up on the Cape? Did you
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
just.
Barnstable High School?
It's
Just
funny
to
because I
learn
was
more about
I was
them.
talking to
Yeah.
an educator actually at the retirement dinner that we had, and she had worked in district and was retiring. I think it was like 32, 33 years, and we were talking about how many of her colleagues when she started were from the Cape versus how many of them are now from Plymouth or from Wareham or from over or Lakeville or like from over the bridges, you know what I mean? And I was just kind of curious, and she was like, "Oh, it's like it used to be not very many, and now it's a lot, right? That come from off Cape." And we talk about why people are leaving and going; they want a shorter commute. So I'm just kind of curious if we can measure how successful we are homegrown. And I don't think homegrown necessarily has to be just Barnstable, but maybe like a Cape Cod kid, you know what I mean? Just somebody from who grew up in the area even, you know what I mean? But I'm just kind of curious and something you can kind of measure year after year. You know what I mean? In 5 years or 8 years, you could be like, oh yeah, you know what? We now are up to having 50% of our new employees were originally from the Cape. You know what I mean? It would be a way of kind of tracking it over the years. Just curious. Thank you.
If I can just jump in, anecdotally, I feel like it's a significant number. Kristen and I have started to meet with all of the new candidates just for a quick Zoom meeting before the final contract gets offered. And I feel like there have been plenty. I hired a teacher today who, Barnstable grad, left the Cape, taught off Cape for 5 years, and now is returning. And that's not a unique story. There have been several other people.
Which is good. And that's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, and then there's people also who are in our buildings who are working towards licensure. They may be serving as paraprofessionals, and we're tapping them on the shoulder saying, we think you're ready, we've got you, we'll support you, apply for an emergency license, and we'll usher you through this. Because there are some real gaps in terms of what positions we're able to fill, but we have some real talented people who are in the pipeline. So, I think we are trying to grow our own. I think there's also incredible strength and value with people who come in with different perspectives too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I feel like we've had a good recruitment year, despite still having some vacancies. I feel like we've had a good recruitment year.
No, and it's kind of that fine line. Because you know what, I'm not from here originally. I grew up off Cape, and I got my firefighter paramedic job, and I'd worked off Cape, and then came down here. So there's something to be said for bringing people on because that's how things don't stay stagnant either. There's other ways to do things in the world, so it's kind of a fine line. But as far as it's just expensive to live here. So it's something that if you can get people who grew up here and understand and it's just going to make it, I would say, better. But okay, thank you. Anybody else? No, we're all set. We are moving on to 5.2. Approve.
Want a motion?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the district improvement plan for 2023-2024 as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Have a motion and second. It is voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 5.2, approve 7th grade field trip to Washington, D.C. on April 18 through 2024.
Great, as they come forward,
So
I'll
come
just
on
set
up,
the
Tim.
stage.
Mr. Hurley, welcome.
So excited.
You told me that. You vowed. I saw you in the audience. I was like, wait a minute. He made it. Welcome.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I'd like to introduce Alyssa Walsh as well, not to steal the thunder. She's a co-teacher with me here. Well, she's a teacher at 7th grade with the history
Oh, can you
department
just,
at BIS.
you got to talk a little bit more into the microphone.
Teacher 7th grade here at BIS, and I'm currently in the 6th grade at BIS. So, Alyssa, you want to say hello?
Hi, happy to be here. It's my second year
Well-
at Barnstable.
Welcome.
So, as you know, I've been trying to secure a trip for BIS for many years. I really feel this was an opportunity that BIS used to have that they lost a long time ago, and I think it's time to revitalize it. I appreciate the support and advice from Sarah and Jane and David over the past couple weeks and months. We're at the point where we're going to learn how to crawl before we walk and learn how to walk before we run, but we need movement. And this looked like the trip that could possibly give us movement, being a 7th grade trip to DC, get this under our wings, establish something that could be a yearly thing for BIS that 7th graders could look forward to, but also embraces the curriculum that they are experiencing in both 6th and 7th grade while they're there, kind of a culminating activity. Okay? I know we had a slide. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, so where we're going. We're going to DC. And we're going to be there 18th to 20th. Length of it is going to be 3 days. Thank you. Thanks, Mo. Day one is we're going to be taking the bus up there. That was obviously a cost-saving measure. We're going to get there, meet our tour director, have dinner, and we're going on a guided sightseeing tour that evening of many of the Washington sites, seeing under the lights. Anybody who's ever been to Washington, D.C. at night knows they light it up, and it is beautiful. Day two. We're going to be going to Mount Vernon excursion, the U.S. Capitol guided tour, Supreme Court visit, Holocaust Museum visit, dinner, evening Washington, D.C. ghost tour, and we are going to reach out to our local representatives to see if we can, that'd be nice if we could run into them while we're there on that guided tour of the Capitol building. Day three, breakfast, Arlington National Cemetery and the Marine Corps War Memorial, Smithsonian visits, we're definitely going to be going to the National Museum of Natural History, if I can get that out, because that fits in very well with the curriculum we have for the history and science. If there's time allowing, we're also going to try and go to the National Air and Space Museum to keep tying into our science curriculums. Okay? So, history standards that we're going to cover. Again, these are standards that they're going to be experiencing through 6th and 7th grade as a culminating activity within 7th grade. We're going to be talking about the Paleolithic and Neolithic eras. We're going to be examining those while we're there within the Natural History Museum. We're going to be discussing ancient Egypt. We're going to talk about the democratic and political concepts that developed in ancient Greece. A lot of the architecture we're going to see down there is directly from a Roman or a Greek perspective. And clearly the principles of our government as a republic comes from Rome. So we're going to discuss that, and it is a major part of the curriculum that they discover in 7th grade. I'm going to let Alyssa carry this part.
Yeah, so I feel it's going to be such a powerful experience to have the students experience the Holocaust Museum at DC, the Genocide Education Act that was recently adopted in Massachusetts is one that I've worked on this summer. I did a National Endowment for Humanities Summer Institute and also worked to create some new curriculum writing for our grade 7 students. So being able to understand the individual and human nature involved in this event and have it experience at a different place than the classroom is going to allow students to better understand and give them a great entry point into such an important measure that we're teaching our students.
jumped a little bit onto the history standards. I was going to yeah, it's okay. Our visit to the Holocaust Museum, though, is going to be an important part of that trip and tying in with those standards. So the science standards we're going to be covering are analyzing and interpreting evidence of the fossil record. Again, this ties in a lot with the Paleolithic and Neolithic eras as well. Constructing argument using anatomical structures to support evolutionary relationships. Construct an explanation based on evidence on how Earth's surface has changed over scales that range from local to global in size. That is a significant part of the two museums that we're going to be going to, looking at the evolution of the Earth as far as tectonic plates and how it's the 6.5 billion years it's been here, what has occurred. And then finally, obtain and communicate information on how data from past geological events are analyzed for patterns and used to forecast the location and likelihood of future catastrophic events. So what's included? The trip will include round-trip transportation. We will be taking busing from BIS down to Washington, D.C. Accommodations in triple or quad rooms, full breakfast daily, and hearty, authentic dinner daily.
Or heavy, whichever.
Yeah, you know. So entrance fees to the attractions per itinerary, granted that the entrance fees to the Smithsonian's are free. However, you do have to make the reservations, so they'll be taking care of that for us. Guided sightseeing tours and city walks per itinerary, full-time professional director, online tour diary, and also they're going to be providing chaperone services for us in the evenings to help security measures during our evening stay, so the chaperones can actually get some sleep. So, if you could advance one more slide. Thank you. So there were two types of travel insurance that were available. We had a $16 a day basic insurance, and we had a $24 a day premium insurance, if you will, that would cover any traveler cancellation up to within 48 hours of the event itself. It'll cover most of the costs. We are including the $24 a day insurance automatically with our students that do enroll to ensure that they're covered in case we have, situations like COVID. Right. We know that when we had trips going on during that time, snafus happened. So we'd like to be able to cover everybody that, so that's going to be a mandatory part of it. And that is the end of our presentation for tonight.
Excellent.
Having said that, we were hoping to get your blessing as far as launching this activity, and we really do think it will be an important step for BIS and letting the community know just how much we have to offer.
Excellent job.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation. Anybody?
Yeah, sure. Mr. Hurley, you are a great salesperson. If you get out of education, sales is for you. You almost sold me on volunteering for being a chaperone this trip, but almost. The both of you should be congratulated for taking on this endeavor. And you both seem like dynamic teachers, so congratulations. I'm all for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, we've talked previously, worked together at Barnstable during that 2021 year, and then that was a very good year. But this is, it's wonderful, the vision, the organization, the passion. But just on a root level, I'm a graduate, of the then Barnstable, of the Hyannis Middle School, when we had two middle schools in this town. And the point of fact is, our 8th grade trip, we went to Canada. And Miss O'Toole ran that trip for many years. And I remember specifics of that trip to this day. And in terms of how much I learned, how much I remember that I still needed to learn. I was a little bit outspoken in those times, if you can imagine, and I needed to calm down, here and there. But it was just a wonderful experience that at our class reunions we reconnect on, we reflect on to this day, and I think that's the trip is wonderful, and it connects to the curriculum frameworks, and it's going to be a tremendous. But I think you talking about bringing these trips back to BIS. And really harnessing, something that this community was proud of for many years, was kind of the sentiment that launched you. And so in our previous conversations, just thank you for the work that you've done behind the scenes. Thank you both. And I'm just very supportive and looking forward with great expectation, to this school year and how this builds up and how we can support you, and get this established. And then, as you said, have this something that we can, again, have in perpetuity.
And Andre, I appreciate that because both Alyssa and I come from a place where, we enjoyed our studies within the classroom, but both of us have some very lasting memories of these special field trips that we had when we were learning and growing. So we'd like to be able to offer these experiences to our students.
So I think that is an important piece, especially where some of our students have never traveled off Cape, maybe except for sports. But I think it's a great opportunity. I thank you for the abundance of information you provided, what people don't see out in the public behind. We had 5 different documents, the details that were provided about the trip, especially in the area of safety, identifying minutely the costs. I looked through all of it, and it makes it an easy yes.
Thank you.
Because I can see that the homework was done, and our students will not only have a great trip, but all the things we think about with the safety and the security are also front and foremost. So thank you for providing everything.
Thank you.
Tim, it's been a while. You made it.
I said I'd be back.
When did we first start talking about this? Probably 2 years ago. I think we were outside the high school, and you and I were having a conversation about that. I think it was 2 years ago. It wasn't last school year. I think it might have been the school year before.
I've been working on this for about 5 years.
Yeah,
it was
but
2 years ago that I finally came.
When you came to me,
Yeah.
we had a conversation about it, how to do it, and all of that, and all of the stuff that went. Thank you, honestly. Thank you very much for the tenacity to not take no and keep going. And okay, I'll get the documents. I'll do what I have to do to make it. And the amount of work that you have done that I know of over the last, and I'm sure you've done a ton more than what you and I have talked about over the last 2 years. But thank you for the kids, because you're not getting any out of this. This is for the kids of the 6-7 building. So thank you for continuing to push forward and figuring out how to do the avenue to get to where you needed to get to. And obviously, without a doubt, I support this 1,000%. But thank you, honestly. They always talk about educators going above and beyond, and what people don't realize is this one, you went way above and beyond. Like, people don't even understand how far above and beyond you've gone to get this done and get to this point. So thank you very much for doing it for the kids of Barnstable and the future kids coming up. I honestly, like I said, people don't understand. I don't even think necessarily even the school committee members understand. I don't even understand, but at least I had a little bit of insight from a couple of years ago. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there is a motion for tonight, and I will pose that shortly. The pending the approval, is that just checking with Dave Anthony to make sure the insurance coverage meets what he feels is necessary?
It's actually all set. We heard back from him, and he feels like everything is cleared in terms of the insurance. We're all set. So
Okay.
you don't need to make the motion with any
Okay.
pending.
So I would move to approve the 7th grade field trip to Washington, D.C. on April 18 through 20, 2024.
I'll second.
I have a motion seconded, voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Congratulations. Have fun.
Thank you all. I appreciate your support. Literally, the advice and the guidance over these years has been appreciative. And Alyssa, a huge shout out. She's kind of come on board here and really helped push this thing through to the end. So
Thank you. Honestly, thank you very much. Have a good night.
thank you.
5.3, revise title and job description for administrative assistant for payroll and student support services. Sarah?
Thank you. So for context, this agenda item does coincide with agenda item 5.4, and then 2 additional agenda items in the finance area. And it's related to administrative assistant support in the school administration building. Based on, we have a vacancy currently in the administrative assistant. It had been for school finance and student support services. And that job has been a bit of a revolving door in the past year or so, maybe a little bit longer. And the job description had, in my opinion, talking with people in the office morphed and involved a lot of things that didn't always seem to be connected. And it also seemed to be a job that was undoable. It was a job description that you revised last summer, including Medicaid, and there were so many things that were just seemingly problematic. So with the help of Chris Dwelly, Deputy Director for School Finance, and Bill Cole, our Human Resources Director, we did an inventory of the administrative assistant's job responsibilities. We considered the various job functions and needs in the school administration building and the relationship between the school administration building and our school sites and financial sites out in the district. We were also uncovering, as Chris came into the district, some functions of school payroll that was happening in the payroll department, but they don't have the same background knowledge that somebody in the school area would know in terms of payroll. And so over the past maybe 2 months or so, really have been trying to think about how to improve operations in the school administration building. And I appreciate collaboration with the town on this. Mark Milne has also played a role. So what I have for 5.3 and 5.4 are one's a revised job description and one is a new job description for administrative assistants in the school administration building. The job description was revised enough that I just went ahead and rewrote a new one because there had been so many changes. There are some things that moved into Kristen's office because they made sense there, things like homeschool, for example. And so there's not a lot of redlining there. It's really kind of new. So this position in 5.3 is an administrative assistant to support student support services. This would be the executive director for SEL and student services and the related departments that report to her. So that includes a family, community, and engagement center as well as health services. We also have added some school department payroll functions to this person, in part because a lot of tutoring runs out of the student support services area, and so this person would provide some oversight and entry of some key payroll functions. The other job description is a separate item, but is a new position being proposed. So there's a new job description here for an administrative assistant to support special education finances and Medicaid specifically. So these two administrative assistants would support the respective administrators in the office, kind of aligning with a different leadership structure that I introduced coming in last summer. And it mirrors the way the administrative assistant for teaching and learning supports the assistant superintendent, and Jen Kruzchek supports the office of the superintendent. Happy to answer any questions you have in the job description. I don't have it up in front of me, but I can do so momentarily. There has been a lot of eyes on this, including members of the school administration building to kind of take a look and provide input and feedback. We are also purposefully trying to create some redundancy among the roles, so there's some cross-training such that if somebody were out, there is backup and coverage within the office as well. Overall, my hope is that this helps improve some of the services from the school administration building and our operations.
Opening up the questions, Kathy?
So I know the administrative assistants have a contract and that the pay is in line with the contract. Is there a range? It was difficult because I looked at the qualifications with the 5 years experience and the 2-year degree. So I'm just curious if you really think that with that level of experience needed, that the pay is going to be adequate to attract the type of candidate that you're looking for?
So good question. These are unaffiliated positions, and we have them on kind of individual. It's not really an individual contract, but they're unaffiliated positions. within the school administration building. The range is roughly 57,000 to about 71,000 for these positions. And I would expect probably somebody with the experience that we're looking for, including Munis and some of the technological skills on the higher end of that. So later on, when I'm looking for some additional funding, it's at that higher number for this position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? So this is the job description. So just to make sure so this is an already position, it's just changing the job description?
It's changing the job description, yeah, and then there's a new position later on.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, any other questions? Can I get a motion?
Move to revise the title and job description for administrative assistant for payroll and student support services as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. 5.4, approve job description for administrative assistant for special education, finance, and Medicaid.
Great, thank you. So this is a new job description for a new position. Many of these functions are happening. The special education finances have been happening, but like I said, that one position was just unmanageable. So we broke this out to have this administrative assistant support our co-directors of special education as well as our out-of-district coordinator, and really owning the special education finances, including out-of-district tuition, purchase orders, any tuition that we may be bringing in, as well as circuit breaker reimbursement. For many years, actually, we've struggled to maximize our Medicaid claims. We're kind of piecing it together as best we can, but I think that there is some money still left on the table and some additional revenue that we could bring in. So the idea here is that with a dedicated person focusing on special education finances and Medicaid, we'll be able to maximize our return. And that's where the support is coming from with respect to the town in terms of, I think, supporting an additional appropriation. So the job description
the hope
is
is
for
it's
you.
gonna more or less pay for itself
Yes.
in a nutshell.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And all the other things pertain here with respect to the salary range and it being an
It's all
unaffiliated position.
It's all non-affiliated. Okay. Can I get a motion? Or any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the job description for administrative assistant for special education finances and Medicaid as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion and second, voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 5.5, approve the enrichment cluster coordinator job description.
Great, thank you. So this is a new job description for a stipend in the BTA contract. And I've been working with the BTA president on this. Enrichment clusters has been something that has been going on at the Barnstable Community Innovation School. You have attended the enrichment clusters during the 6 weeks in March. It had been coordinated by the PBL specialist, but in talking with the union, we kind of both agree that this does not need to be solely something that the PBL specialist would run, and that actually that job changed to a PBL coach last year. We revised that job description, and because it's kind of a 6-week duration, it's kind of an extra duty, probably most appropriate as an extra duty assignment for a member of that bargaining unit. Additionally, there's been so much success with the enrichment clusters. I have heard that there's interest perhaps at some of our other K-3 schools to mirror that program and engage in the community and have the students engage in something similar in other K-3 schools. So we wrote this job description more generically, not just for one school in mind, but with K-3 in mind, that the individual would spend time in the fall working on coordinating and planning for the 6-week enrichment clusters, implementing those in the March timeframe, and then after the cluster celebration happened, kind of plan for the next year and have that celebration and send out thank yous and things of that nature. And so my request this evening is that you support this enrichment cluster coordinator stipend, and I'm noticing that it says per BTA contract, so you're probably wondering what that number is, and I did not write it down. And my apologies. But 2,000. It was tricky to come up with because when we looked in the appendix of the contract, there really isn't anything comparable to it. But it took into account an additional roughly 2 hours per week between the start of the year and then a few weeks into like early April for extra duty time that we would expect.
Okay. So this is writing this more or less for the one school, but realizing it's probably going to move to one at every elementary school.
It could
potentially
expand to other
Okay.
elementary schools, and we would be looking and working with the principal to work within their budget to support it if they wanted to going forward.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the enrichment cluster coordinator job description as presented in tonight's materials.
Second.
Have a motion and second, voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. 5.6, approve school committee policies in Section K, community relations. Kathy?
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, this is a first read for people to provide feedback, make sure everybody's all right with the changes. If we could have that feedback before our September 22nd meeting, that would be terrific.
Okay.
Oh, there's a change document that summarizes the changes
Okay.
as well, as usual.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none. Moving on to 5.7, approve school committee policies in Section L,
And-
educational agency relations, first read.
Yes, and so that's the same explanation I just gave.
Sounds good. 5.8, suspend policy BGB policy adoption. So just to kind of clarify what this is as we just did in 5.6 and 5.7, our rules say that we have to introduce a policy at one meeting and then vote on it the next. This suspends that policy so we can have it introduced to us and vote on it in the same meeting. So this is going to be for the next item, which is 5.9, revised policy IHBAA. So this is just to suspend that double read or two meeting rule for this next policy.
Move to suspend policy BGB, policy adoption for item 5.9 of tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
I have a motion second, voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. 5.9, revised policy IHBAA, observations of special education programs. Kathy?
So as you've looked at that policy document, there aren't a lot of changes, but I think the language changes are important for clarity and to make sure that the policy is in line with the intent of IDEA. And the reason that I requested to have it approved at this meeting is because it is critical to the special education process. It's very important to families. And I think that the changes we made are keeping in mind what's best for our students. And this way it can be in place for the beginning of the school year. If it is approved, that clarity in the language will be implemented immediately and make it a much better entry into the school year.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Move to revise policy IHBAA, observations of special education programs as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Have a motion and second, voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 6.1, facilities capacity assessment. I will turn it over to Mike and Mr. Phillips. Sorry, Mr. Lambro, my bad.
Mike's fine. Please. So Mike Lambros here, Chip Phillips, and I'll let Chip introduce. Chip's leaving this Friday, Collier's, so I'll let him introduce his counterpart.
All right, with me today is Derek Osterman, who is going to be taking over covering as I move on. We've been spending time talking about it and are making sure that the handoff is seamless and that we especially have everything covered for the workshop coming up.
Yeah, good evening. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Derek Osterman, Senior Director with Colliers, and delighted to be taking control back over from Chip, and you're a very important client to us, and so we're excited to continue to see the project forward.
All right, so want to give a update on what we've been working with on the space side. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, knowing that a lot of the details and questions can be discussed at the workshop.
Yeah, so if I could just kind of chime in for a sec. So we're going to have that workshop on September 20th, just as a reminder. We're going to be with us, principals,
Probably a few central office leaders.
Yeah, Mike will be there from facilities. So it's going to be more of a deep dive into this report will be the workshop. And so tonight's kind of the 30,000 high view, and it'll kind of give us a couple weeks to kind of look through it, kind of think of questions and kind of get an idea where we're going, and then we'll meet on the 20th for our workshop at the high school library. And that's going to be that's where we'll do a deeper dive with all of our own staff, okay?
Yeah, I want to give enough just so you understand what the data is you're looking at and kind of the methodology behind it, because that will help prepare for that workshop. All right. So also want to just kind of give a reminder as to where we were last time. We did present the conditions assessments, the physical conditions of the buildings across that 1 million square feet back on the 7th of June. Now, really, since then, been focusing on space utilization. To do that, we've gone through all of the floor plans of the schools, gone through scheduling, staff lists, looked at all of the general classrooms, looked at all of the enrichment spaces, special education, student services, really looking at all of the buildings to understand what's in each building and how it's being used, where space is adequate, where it's not, and then tied that in with demographic projections so that we understand moving forward how well the current schools will support the enrollment of in each building. Just a kind of quick reminder, back in June we identified $132.4 million of total need across all of the schools based on different priorities, based on level of urgency. The important number there is the 72.8 of what's considered high priority need, that those items that are of the most urgent. Across each of the schools, this is, again, a summary based on the identified cost per square foot. So you can't compare the need in the high school compared to, the Barnstable United or some of the smaller schools because of the scale. So this equalizes that and showed that Centerville and Barnstable West Barnstable have the highest relative need. However, Barnstable Intermediate and then again Centerville have the highest relative Priority 1 needs. So just, important things to think about as you're looking at the schools. Just want to remind everybody of that. I know last meeting, it seemed like there was an interest in having a little bit more detail on the schools. So in this package also, I put a summary for each school and of the conditions and what kind of the high level urgent need, or not necessarily urgent, but the bigger projects that were identified are, just to give you a sense of what we're talking about. And a lot of them are very repetitive. There's a lot of HVAC needs. There's a lot of interior finishes, as the schools age, and roofs in several buildings and those kinds of things. But so that's all in this packet. Again, unless you want to spend a lot of time on it today, it's there, and we'll just move through it. So, do want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the impacts on space that, particularly in recent years, have been affecting the schools. I want to make sure I have this because I don't have my contacts in. There has been a number of issues and items that have, require space in schools, one of which is significant growth in the mandated special needs programs across all of the schools. As more students are back in the district, as there seems to be a lot of growth in those areas, across the board here. Another area that has, before moving on that, those are programs that require space. They require larger spaces in some needs, in some issues, more square foot per student than a general classroom. So that does create a big impact. Another one is the increase in students who are learning language, the EL program. Schools that, had one EL teacher, in some cases have 2, 3, even 4. Because of changes in that growth. And again, those require spaces in order to provide the learning environment that is going to best support those needs. As we think about that, we've been talking about, each teacher really needs, a half a classroom, 2 teachers sharing a classroom to provide that. And, so once you get into, 3, 4 teachers, you're now talking about 2 classrooms that are needed in order to support those programs. The physical and emotional growth supporting students is growing, or physical and emotional support for students is growing across the country. Coming out of COVID, coming out of the isolation, there's just a lot more recognized needs in order to make sure that our students are, safe and are secure and those kinds of things. So that means a lot more professionals in the buildings that require offices and private spaces to communicate with students, with families, all those kinds of things. As I understand, the Barnstable is undertaking a broader review of the projections for special education needs. And so that will, I think, help inform moving forward where some of those programs are going. Because right now, we're seeing what's been happening. We know that there's an increase in the elementary schools and that those students are going to move up forward into the elementary school, up into intermediate and high school. And that's going to have an impact, continuing to move forward. Overall, enrollment projections are relatively flat over the next 10 years. A lot of the growth is, particularly elementary schools overall, is flat. There's different growth in each village. Some villages are showing small decreases, some are showing increases. But overall, that population is relatively flat. The Barnstable United is looking at a 7% growth at its peak. Barnstable Intermediate, 10%, and the high school right now is showing actually a decrease. Overall over the next 10 years, slight couple of percentage points. So, those are, not great impacts, but you need to make sure that you're recognizing those when you're talking about school space. And another issue that's come up is some of the upcoming legislation. For instance, it's going to be required that each building has a lactation room with a, refrigerated space and those kinds of things. Again, it's just something that you're going to need in each school so that staff members, faculty members that are, have given birth have that ability to, have that privacy in the schools and, in the high school, even possible students. So, all of that is part of some of the legislation going forward that impacts space that we want to make sure that we're taking into account as we look at the buildings. So let's talk about the schools. Again, I have this organized basically by age. So starting with the Early Learning Center, moving up. Again, the first is a summary of the conditions. That's a building that is relatively small. It's portables, modular buildings actually. I like to say instead of portables, but it's starting to show age. There are items coming up. It's small, but starting to see flooring failing, starting to see sink counters failing, those kinds of things. So it needs to be on the list. Looking at the spaces, so generally this one's a little bit of an anomaly, but we're breaking out the spaces on 4 basic types. First is general classrooms. In an elementary school, it's your regular 3rd grade classroom. High school, it's a English, math classroom that can be used for anything. They're fairly interchangeable. So we're looking at that. Then we're looking at the enrichment spaces, which have more specialized needs. An art room that has different casework, has larger space anticipated for it, music, those kinds of things. In the older grades, you're going to have home ec rooms, family consumer science rooms, and all those kinds of things in there. Special education spaces, and then student support spaces, which are primarily offices or EL programs, those kinds of things. So we're going to see that throughout. The way this is organized is initially the first block is what was current in the 22-23 year when we got this, when we collected the information and analyzed it. So that's what's existing. The center block is kind of what is needed. So that shows, a negative number is a deficiency, a positive number is a surplus, and then where that is in enrollment projections. So that's kind of the 3 sections, and for each of the groupings. And then below, just a short kind of, bullets of what those space deficiencies, or in some cases opportunities, might be. All right, any questions? And again, this is based on spreadsheet list of all of the spaces and all of those details that will be, part of that workshop.
I just have one question. So this is based, just reading the first line, so this is based on a half day?
Yep.
Because preschool's half day, so this is not full day, or this
Correct.
Is what we have right now, which is the half day.
Correct. And that is something that, right now, the way this is analyzing is assuming continued half day. If a decision is made to go full day, which many of these students could use, that would have a whole other number of classrooms and support areas needed. So at this point, and that's something we can talk about, how we do want to portray it. At this point, I'm not making that assumption that that's the decision, but know that this is assuming continuing half day. And the anticipation that that the program is growing and that they could use another 3 classrooms half day within the next several years. Okay. All right. So again, summary of the conditions at each school. I'm not going to read through them. You guys have those. You can look at those on your leisure. But as we go through, I do want to just kind of pause on some of the key things. Looking at the BCIS, the number of classrooms is appropriate. The issue is that, and here we have taken into account the anticipated modular buildings. Because we felt, right now I would be saying that there is no enrichment spaces there because everything's on a cart. However, when the modular buildings come in, those spaces are going to be provided, and don't want to, mask that fact and overstate something that's, as we get further into the year, is not going to be the case. Where there are shared spaces that shouldn't be shared in order to provide the proper support and service, we're recognizing that they should be separated. When you've got two, school psychologists that are sharing a space, it becomes very unwieldy to have the appropriate meeting. So, while that is an accommodation, they're making it work. In the ideal world, not even the ideal, what should be is two separate offices. So we're anticipating that in here. So you see, for the BCIS, that it's an additional 2,000 square foot needed beyond the portables right now in order to provide all of the special education and student support spaces. Barnstable, West Barnstable is actually the school that has the biggest space needs, showing about 10,000 or 11,000 square feet needed for the enrollment projections. Right now, there's 13 classrooms. The reality is they probably could get away with 12 last year. Again, this is based on the 23-24 year. However, moving forward, in order to maintain the appropriate class size, they're really going to need to have 16 classrooms. So those extra classrooms is 2,550 net square feet. Enrichment right now, they have none. Everything's on a cart. They should have the 4 rooms. That's another 4,800 square feet. So that's kind of an example right now of how this works its way through. Centerville, again, another 3,600, 3,700 square feet short. Hyannis West, 3,600 square feet. And again, a lot of these, the issue is not in the classrooms, it's in those other functional and support spaces that have been taken over by classrooms or by mandated programs. West Villages, similar, 3,700 square feet. Barnstable United, based on its current configuration, it looks like it's short 3,300 square feet. Again, that's all in the enrichment support spaces. However, there is space opportunities there. The library has opportunity space that right now is, being cut up a little bit to support some of this, but actually building out some of those areas, and also the locker rooms that are no longer used for, showers and things like that, provides opportunities with some renovation to address some of these needs, or all of them. So we also, do want to make sure that we recognize that. Similarly, at Barnstable Intermediate School, so this one is a little bit different. The intermediate school and the high school is a different type of analysis because the kids move more. So they're not in 1 or 2 classrooms the way they are on the younger ages. So we took the entire, 100-page classroom schedule and mapped that out for every day, every period, in order to understand what the real utilization is. So we look at utilization in a couple of ways at the intermediate and the high school. One way is the classroom schedule. How often is a classroom utilized? That's one analysis. And then the other one is how many students are in that. And that's a different analysis, class size usage as well. So here, particularly for the general classes and the enrichment spaces, those specialty classes we can look at. So, looking at Barnstable Intermediate School, general classrooms, there's 32 general classrooms, basically 8 per grade. Or, 16 per grade based on the teams. They have an average of 18 students per classroom. Now, we recognize that 25 is really the max, but we can never plan to the max. So we think about 85%, which is, I think, 21.6 students. So that's kind of your sweet spot. So there's some space here in the class sizes. Schedule blocks, there's 35 blocks per week at the intermediate school. That's 7 blocks times 5 days. It's a pretty straightforward schedule. So if you look at those blocks, there's 35 blocks times 32 classrooms is 1,120 available blocks in the general classrooms. They're used 864 times throughout that week, which is a 77.1 utilization rate. All right, so again, 85% is, particularly from a scheduling standpoint, is your max. Anything beyond that, and you just don't have the flexibility you need to provide, the number of sections and the number of, options, and that kind of thing. So that's on the general classrooms. The enrichment spaces are used less, and that makes sense. In many cases, particularly in the intermediate school with the team teaching, there's not as you don't have as many kids going through there as many times. So and they have specific requirements in each room that make it less usable for other things. Now looking at student enrollment population, again, you've got the number of students would be basically that average of 18, though we didn't take an average. We actually added. This classroom, period 2, has 17. This one has 23. Added all of those up throughout the week, through all the general classrooms, it's 15,524 seats that are used. At 25 per classroom at a max, that's 28,000 would be available. So that utilization is 55.4. All right, so smaller class sizes. So, you're using them at 77.1%, but you're also not at 25 students per classroom, so that's why that utilization comes down, which tells you you have some flexibility there. There's some room for growth. The bottom section, where we add that growth. All right, so the current students, 22-23 students, there were 651 students. The peak projection is 717. That's a 10% growth. So we added the 10% to the number of students, and we see that you can use the same utilization. You don't have to add sections. You can still do that. Classroom utilization goes up from 55.4 to 61.1. On the specials, goes up from 28.7 to 31.7. Both well below the 85% goal. So that says that there is space there for the anticipated growth in that school. Now, what we don't know is what's going to happen with special education. And as the students that are now in the elementary school go to the intermediate school, that's that whole analysis that still needs to be done on what those projections are moving forward, because there may be additional spaces repurposed for those programs, and it still does feel like there's room in that school. Yep.
So my question is for special education and student services, the 21 for the rooms for 21 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that those, because there's no numbers past that, I would assume that means they're adequate for the kids we have
Yes.
in that building and those services? Is that my assumption, right?
Yes,
Okay.
there was not the same level of sharing as in the elementary schools
Okay.
in this building.
There's not a deficit for that.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Right.
Keep on going.
The intermediate school and the high school are much more complicated because the schedule is much more
Right.
complicated. In the high school, each day has a different schedule. And there are, I didn't change the 35 blocks per week. It's, now I'm not remembering how much it is. But it's a different number than the 30. I copied the base over I think it's 20. I think that's right. I think it's 29 because some days have 6, some days have 7. It's all over the place. And again, that's last year's schedule. You know, I think that moving forward, there's even a 2-week schedule going that rotates every day, and every day is different. So the math is still right on this, just that 35 per week didn't get updated. So here you've got 81 general classrooms. And again, that's math, English, social studies, world language. We're including science in that, even though science does have labs in there. And an average of 16 students per class. So again, that's, you know, much lower on average than the 21.6 that would be a kind of a goal, a sweet spot. From a utilization standpoint, they're at 76.5% and 74.7% for the enrichment spaces. Again, these are using the same methodology that we talked through already. And then on the student enrollment utilization, you know, again, small classes used 76% of the time means that you're only at 49% of your student utilization for the general classrooms and 57.8% on your enrichment classrooms. With a anticipated 2% decrease, you know, again, you don't have the same kind of pressures in the high school currently, with the big unknown being the special education needs, you know, as the students that are in the district and are coming into the district move through. You know, it's complicated. It becomes clearer when you can see all the details. But the you know, the keys to note are those percentage utilization. That's really you know, what the out of this whole graph. That's the importance, with again 85% being your sweet spot.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So after 85%,
Yep.
that means that room's going to deteriorate precipitously,
No,
or that means that you can't use that. What does that mean?
So that means that you have really limited flexibility in your schedule. You know, it has nothing to do with condition. It means that if you need to add a section of 12th grade English, it becomes very difficult to do that. If you want to add a new elective, it becomes very difficult to do that. So it really has to do with being able to, you know, to have that flexibility to meet the changing needs in a particular year, you know, on your educational programs.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question. And then, you know, I'm looking forward to the September 20th workshop where we can really, because you provided a lot of information, very helpful. You know, Sarah, you know, when you talks about, you know, equity of opportunity, you know, again, I work at the intermediate high school level, you know, and so I'm not at the, you know, I don't understand, you know, it's very helpful for me at the elementary level. You know, you have certain enrichments on a cart, you know, and obviously that's not optimal. You know, certain times, you know, teaching last year in Sandwich, they had PE came into my class, you know, no problem, you know, and it can work. But if we can find, you know, Mike, you talk about space mining, you know, space optimization. If we can do better, then we should be doing better.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
So I do think that the next meeting will fill in a lot of the gaps. Frankly, I'm surprised at the 49% space utilization in general for the general classrooms, combined with the enrichment at 57.8, because we seem to get some input that tells us there's no more space at the high school, but I think it's because of the dedicated space or
Right.
the
Well,
type of
it's
space.
that, but it's also the number you're probably thinking about is more the classroom utilization. It's 76%, which is very close. It's kind of in the range. You know, you want to think 75 to 85%. I'm taking 85 as really your maximum, but 75 to 85 is kind of what schedulers target. So you're in that range which means that your classrooms are being used throughout the day. You don't have classrooms sitting open. The 49% comes in when you've got an average of 16 kids in those classrooms, and you could have 23, 22. So you could, potentially, if you need a space, you could repurpose it and increase your number of students per classroom slightly, which would increase that 49%.
If I may, back to that 16 students per classroom. Not that I doubt your numbers, but I taught there just a few years ago, and forever, every class I taught had 25 kids. Every single class I taught so things have changed.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a positive. Because
It is. I mean, can you teach 25 kids? Yeah. Is it ideal? No.
I thought everybody did, yeah.
It's, that the programs now are much more project-based. They're much more collaborative, and that requires additional space. It's not 25 kids sitting in rows anymore. And so...
Yeah, one second, Sarah.
I would just add, I think, in addition to the complexity of the schedule, part of that complexity does also come from a wide range of class sizes, and so we're looking at an average, but it's important to keep in mind, and there's backup numbers for all of this. Chip has looked at the entire schedule, like course by course and section by section, and so it's hard to capture the entirety of the high school in an average. Right. Our pathways are going to have some smaller numbers, but your bread and butter courses, maybe like an English 9 class, is going to be on the higher side. So there's just a lot of variety depending upon the nature of the course.
Okay, any other questions? No?
All right. And then just kind of one more, just the kind of conclusions, and kind of talk through this throughout, but for the most part, the general classrooms are not the real pressure right now. They've been, spaces have been converted, and they've been, provided because you need to. Two of the buildings that had the biggest problems are getting the modular buildings, so that's good. BCIS and Hyannis West. So, recognizing that you've got some real short-term problems, and you're taking steps to address those. Space needs are the most severe in the elementary schools. The enrichment spaces in particular have been converted in order to meet classroom space and mandated program spaces. So that's why more and more of them, particularly in elementary schools, are on a cart. Again, the English language learners require space in order to get the support they need. So that's an additional pressure. Talked about the cart already, and that the intermediate school and high school don't have those same pressures, and in fact have some potential opportunities right now, but the big unknown being what is going to happen with the needs for the mandated special education programs as those students age.
Would you also consider not just, and I know the special education program coming up, and I get the bubble, and I get that. Would you all, and I know you said the significant increase in ELL, but this is kind of the first time you brought up the ELL kids. I know there's a huge, over the years, our ELL population has gone up quite a bit.
Yes.
Just from our staffing perspective, from our point of having to add ELL teachers, and back 8 years ago, there was a couple. Now it's almost its own little school system within the school system, right?
I think every school has a minimum of 2 now.
Right. So do you see that special education, but ELL also? I mean, I know you put it here, but that's kind of the first time you talked about the ELL.
I'd brought it up earlier.
But that's kind of the two of them together is kind of what's the bubble coming up.
I think, it's I've heard a number of theories on the ELL growth from, families that came over before COVID and got stuck and stayed versus that are coming over after. I don't know. The hope is, particularly as the high school, you're going to have students coming in that are learning, but the students that come in at the lower grades hopefully need less support by the time they get to the high school. So, you know, I don't know. I think it's worthwhile trying to understand more where that growth is coming from now, and whether that is, you know, hitting a peak or going to continue to grow.
Right.
I don't have an answer on
Well,
that.
I remember getting a report at one point, goes back probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it was like the projection of the ELL staffing needs over the next, like, I think it was 10 years, kind of the same projection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was astronomical, the amount of, and it's, I would like to see that report again, because to kind of see, okay, here we are 5 years out, like kind of see how the projections are. Are we above the curve or below the curve? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that and trying to figure out how to project that.
Right.
And it came forward that there's just not enough information right now
To know
to you know,
if it's
without
going up, how fast it's going up, or all of
and
that.
whether
right.
whether it's going to sustain at this level.
Right.
Okay.
I just know from us who hire not hire the staff, but fund the staff, like give funding for additional staff. It seems like ELL is what we're kind of always like
every year.
Yeah, you always have to add a couple more ELL teachers every year at different age groups, or in the middle of the year.
Yep.
Like that seems to be the one that you have to hire. You know what I mean? So I was just kind of curious as to what your projections were, if you had any, or how you think that's going to affect the facilities. Obviously, it's going to affect it.
Well, right, because again, as we're looking, we're saying that you need, you know, a classroom for every 2 teachers.
Right. So if you have a classroom of 4
If you-
teachers, then that's
Then you
need
should have
the
2
extra
classrooms.
classroom.
It means
Right.
that that the students are, you know, probably getting distracted,
Right.
or you know that there's too much, you know, ambient noise and movement and everything else. That if you've got kind of 2 groups, you can manage that. Anything more than that becomes, you're not as efficient in your teaching and learning as you would like, particularly for kids that are, you know, learning the language.
right. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think we're all set. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. Thank you to the 3 of you for coming. Let's see, we're going to move on to 6.2, capital improvement projects update. Mike, you're back.
I'm back. All right, thank you. Thanks, Mo. So, I have a list of our capital improvement from FY22 through FY24. So I'll go through and just give a quick little update of where we stand with these projects and what the focus is, because some of the projects are redundant. They're the same name, different years, so they do focus on different sections of the district. All right, I'm waiting for my computer to turn on. Sorry, but I can get started. So the BHS, BIS, I'll start at the top. Rooftop ventilation replacement. This is the high school. This project's currently going on. This is the cafeteria project. As everybody's heard, the cafeteria did not open with the start of school. Luckily, we have 2. This project is estimated to be open for students first week of October. As we get closer, we'll tighten up that timeline and have a definitive date. So moving on.
So where is that in the, has it, I mean, I know, we all know what happened, but has the ventilator's been changed out?
Yep, yeah, so the rooftop units.
So this project is, other than the extenuating circumstances, the project is done?
Yeah, we're on the final closeout. We're doing controller work, final electrical work to the units. They actually poured a footing to put up a beam in the cafeteria today. That beam will go up later this week. And then a lot of ceiling tile work, just closeouts, parts of the project, small cosmetic, kind of clean the space up. And then, yeah, so October 2nd, or the first week of October is the target right now. That can change, hopefully, in our favor, but we'll inform people as that date changes. So we're going to go on to FY23. Same name, but different focus. So BHS, BIS, rooftop ventilation replacement program. So this was, if you recall, our 5-year plan. This has been ongoing since 2018 with the library. We did a big library upgrade. Then we did the 1400 section. Now we're doing the cafeteria at the high school. However, BIS started to show a need. There are many more units at the high school. They're in better shape than BIS. So what we did was we targeted BIS for this current scope, the FY23. It's in the design phase with our engineer that we just signed a contract with in May. The hope with this is to go out to bid in October. We have 4.1 million with another 1.2 in grants. And also the project above came in about 1.5 under budget. So all said, we have roughly 7 million, 7.2 to really tackle a big chunk of that building. We're going to do as many units as we can for 7.2 million. The hope is 8 to 12. There's 22 on the school. So if we can phase this over 2 to 3 years, that's a fast project for a school of that size to replace all the rooftop units. Sorry. So again, that's in the design phase. It's going to go out to bid probably late October. BPS door and window replacement. This is $1 million. The focus here is BCIS window replacement. The entire school, all new windows. It's in the design and final estimating phase. Target bid again is, and you're going to hear this a lot tonight. We have a lot of stuff getting ready to go out to bid. Target date is end of October, mid-October. So, and the reason we're targeting October, we could delay these, but because of lead times, a lot of these projects, we want to get out to bid as early in the fall as possible because lead times, and you get a favorable price for contractors securing that summer work the following year. So that's the strategy here.
For the rooftop ventilators, wasn't there kind of a glut, or not a glut, the opposite? Wasn't it taking like 6 to 8 months or something?
It was 44 weeks.
Yeah.
And actually at week 38, they reached out and said another 6 weeks. So, but they're here, they're on the roof, so.
All right, no, but I'm just saying, but going to BIS and like, this isn't our final end of this project, so they're just, it's almost a year's.
So that timeline has drastically improved.
Okay.
We're seeing 30 weeks.
Oh, okay. So it's getting
40
better.
weeks.
Okay.
So with a project like this, the rooftop units can go on the roof towards the end of the project. Most of the work is in the building and disassembling the old unit, the ductwork, the VAVs in the building, a lot of the piping. So
that's not too
again,
bad.
if they show up August, it's almost a plug and play at the end. You put the unit on, you wire them up, you connect everything, and then it's balancing. So it's about a month from when the units show up. So that timeline's actually pretty favorable right now, 30 to 40 weeks. Moving on to BPS generator repair and install. I'm going to combine this with the transformer, which is the bottom of the FY23. These projects got combined. We put these out to bid together as one. We've signed a contract. We have had a pre-construction meeting. Here's where the lead times have not improved. These are 52 weeks out. We're reviewing submittals to install these generators. The install will probably be next August, September. They're saying the lead times is improving. However, this is outside of the school. A lot of the prep work will be done. The slab will be there. They'll just drop them in. They'll have to wire them up. We can do that in the fall while school's in session. We do it on a weekend. So those two projects we're in the submittal review phase. We're about to be ordering units. BHS tennis court repairs. So final design, we've been working with the high school principal, the interim AD, and the boys and girls tennis coach to review. Town council had asked, when we asked for this appropriation, that we look at pickleball courts as well. I believe that you guys had asked for that too.
Peter.
So, yep. So we're putting this out to bid with three alternates, two of which are for 2 pickleball courts, 4 pickleball courts. So If we can get them, if the funds allow, we're going to add them.
When was the last time you worked? It seems, maybe I'm wrong. Time flies. It seems like it wasn't so long ago that you worked on the tennis courts at the high school. Or maybe I'm wrong.
You mean a complete install? Or
like
just patches?
resurfacing, like a
Either
resurfacing?
repairing, resurfacing, or something. It didn't seem like it was that long ago.
So we made a few patches in 2019, just before COVID.
Okay.
I love how we use that to tell time, right?
Yeah.
But there was a resurfacing done. I don't have that date off the top of my head. That was before I started in 2017. I want to say 2012, 2014. I can get that date.
Okay. Now, you might be right. What I think was 2 years ago was 9 years ago or something. That just seems like to me, the 1.6 million for tennis courts. There's no mechanical. There's no electrical. There's no 1.6 million seems like a lot to me.
Do you know by any chance how much the ones over, and I know they're not ours, but the ones over the pickleball courts over at West Villages?
About 850,000.
There's 10 of them.
There's 10 pickleball courts.
And 6
we
tennis,
So we currently have 9 tennis courts. So it's a much larger area. If you take the square footage
it's just bigger.
of our area, it's a bigger area.
But what are they, digging it up?
Oh, yeah. So right now we have bituminous concrete, which is asphalt.
Yeah.
Asphalt's not great. With the freeze-thaw we constantly get on the Cape,
it cracks them.
It cracks. They're actually still suffering cracking just from last winter, which was pretty mild. So
you kind of wonder why that was done.
Yeah. So to combat that, we're going to go post-tension concrete, which will last much longer. You won't get the cracks. You won't get the heaves. So a little bit more expensive, but we won't be saying in 10, 12 years from now, didn't we just do that project? So
Peter, you'll still be sitting down there. Kathy.
So when you are you adding the pickleball courts, or are you replacing tennis courts with some pickleball courts?
So good question. We currently have 9 tennis courts. We're going to replace those with 6. We don't need 9. The tennis population has gone down. We're going to do that. That's more than enough to host an event. That's a lot. Most high schools
the tennis
our
team,
size,
the tennis coaches are they're on board with this. So.
Yeah. Yep. So and then the alternate is we have 1.6 million. If we can get all 4 pickleball courts under that price, we'll do it. If we can't, that's why they're alternates. So it doesn't stop the bid from moving on. So we put a base bid out for the courts, which I don't remember what our estimate is for that. And then I think it was 1.1 and about 200,000 per set of pickleball courts. So we're hoping to fit all of this plus engineering and design, which is in that 1.6 into one scope. So again, this is set to go out to bid October, November of this year for construction after next season. So we'll have one more season of the current courts. Construction will begin next summer. That gives us all summer and into the fall to complete them. All right, so moving on, fuel pump and lift repair. This was a facilities project. Fuel pump has been done. Lift repair actually began today and will be finalized in the next 2 weeks. Campus-wide paving, we have a signed contract with a civil engineer. We're designing the ELC parking lot. If anybody's familiar with that parking lot, if you're looking at it from Oak Craigville Road, the right side was never paved. We're parking on gravel on one side, and there's a huge swale, and we get a lot of standing water. So we're going to address drainage and paving over there, as well as the project part of the review over there is to review traffic flow. Sorry. So that is just in the contract phase with the civil engineer. So that's going to be designed to go out to bid. And a project like that, we just have to coordinate when it can get done. The timeline's much more immediate. So 2.5 $250,000, that's closed out. Mechanical upgrades, that's finalized. Floor replacement, we're doing BIS carpet replacement. We do miscellaneous carpet replacement at all schools when it's needed with this CIP. It was one we used to carry every year. So we're doing BIS main office, band room, the BIS gym floor, and the BWB gym floor with this. We have quotes for the BIS gym. We're awaiting a quote for the main office and the band room at this time. Transformer replacement I already touched on. So FY24, the EFIS wall replacement, we just had the architect and a contractor down investigating. This is in the design phase. This is the EFIS wall that's deteriorating in the Astro Park. And this is going to go out to bid in November, probably December, for a summer 24 project. BPS door and window, so similar name as above, but a different project. This is K-5 exterior doors, so that's all of our elementaries through BUE. This includes the locked main entrance at every school, the man trap. So that's going to be nice to have all new doors at our schools and a safe entrance, a secure entrance. Just to touch on a side note, we're focusing on BHS currently for that same locked vestibule. BPS paving, so again, signed contract, and this appropriation for FY24 is going to focus on sidewalk repair, BUE, High West, and BWB are priorities. BHS Culinary Kitchen, we've been awaiting a grant approval. I reached out to Jackie Gillis today. I've been in contact with her since April. We were supposed to hear late April. We were supposed to hear May, and here we are in September. We haven't heard from the state. We're not the only school that's waiting. They haven't released who's getting these grants. So the grant is for up to $500,000. We have a $500,000 appropriation. The architect is waiting. They've begun design, but they don't know if they're building or designing a $500,000 kitchen or $1 million. So it's a big difference. So we're kind of in a holding pattern there. Mechanical upgrades, we're currently replacing water heaters at BHS, BWB, and we have a pump replacement for our main heating and cooling pumps at BHS and BIS. Those projects will take place this fall. The Night Hall chiller, this is in the final design phase, and it's going to bid October, November, similar to the multiple other projects. BHS softball field replacement, phase 2 upgrade. Phase 2 of the Field of Dreams, but it's the softball phase. We're awaiting a proposal from our design engineer who's done the multipurpose field, the turf, and the tennis courts. Once we have that proposal, he'll put together a design. We'll go out to bid probably February for a summer into the fall project. So we'll have one more season on the current softball field.
Yeah, Mike, just a quick question to add on to what Peter had to say. Just from my mind, I know, and this was a couple years back, that Barnstable committed, I think it was $10 million to the renovation of our athletic fields. You know, that was a big project, and, you know, athletics is something that makes us distinctive in the district, and, you know, the kids in sports keeps them in a good direction. But my question is, in terms of the allocations for the tennis courts and the softball field, is that a part of that those original funds to renovate all of our fields? Because, and the reason I ask that is, you know, obviously the baseball field is done and looks wonderful, and our soccer team had a good game yesterday. We went up 2-0. We lost to Brockton 3-2. I see Principal Friedman here. Had Principal Friedman stayed the entire game, we would have won because we were winning, you know. But she's busy. Yeah, but that's okay. We're gonna get them on the flip side. But the point is, it was wonderful, you know, the field and. But so just these allocations, is that somehow tied to those original funds that we invested in our fields, or is it different monies?
So good question. I'm unaware of the 10 million as a specific number. I do know that the Field of Dreams Phase 1, so the 3-phase was 10 million. There was never an appropriation for 10 million. That was an estimate. Since then, we've spent 5.7 on the multipurpose field, that soccer baseball field. We've spent another I want to say 4 on the turf and track, and now another 1.6 on the tennis courts, and $1 million coming up on the softball. So there was never an appropriation for $1 million. There was a Field of Dreams study that estimated $10 million. Numbers have gone up, but we've stayed on target, and I think we're getting a little more done than we originally wanted to. But when we're all said and done, we'll be over $10 million, I'd assume, as we may already be. But we're going to have some great fields, great facilities.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Is that softball field natural or turf?
So
Because I've heard different things from the community as to what they want.
So we don't have a definitive yet. We're going to design it. We're going to see where the pricing comes in at. And the idea would be to hope for turf, but we want the input from the student athletes and the coaches. It's a much different sport on turf. That's why we want their input. We want to know if they want it. The ball comes off the bat in the turf really quick. So we're going to design it for both and move forward with the bid, which with the decision of the AD, the coaches, and the athletes. So West Villages, sorry, I lost track. West Villages carpet replacement. This is again being designed. We walked the space in August. They're putting together some layouts for us, October, November. Bid for a summer project. This is just, it's too large of a project to do over breaks, even a week at a time, do a section of the building. It's gonna end up being summer of '24, sorry. BPS lighting replacement project. All schools have been completed with LEDs, except West Villages and BHS. BHS is going out to bid separate. That hasn't been done. That's being designed right now. West Villages is the final phase. We dropped off equipment yesterday, and the project will begin 9/11 on Monday. So I do just want to say we're already seeing, and it was the summer, so our schools were closed. We're already seeing pretty substantial savings switching to LED. So this
Wasn't
project.
there also something when we did that? Wasn't there something with the like compact? Or
Yeah, it was through cable.
wasn't there
compact.
rebates and stuff on
Yep.
putting in that equipment?
Yes.
Or putting the light bulbs, I should say, and
Yep.
doing different things.
Correct.
So is that 1.444? Is that our share, or are we getting recouped? Are we recouping that money from the like compact, or
So
how does that work? Like,
the
how
total,
does that fit into this whole thing?
Yeah, so the total project, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but was 1.6 million.
Okay.
We took an appropriation for 1.4. All the elementary schools were paying just our share.
Okay.
Cape Light Compact, the incentive is built in.
Okay.
The reason it's 1.4 and the total cost to the district was 1.1 is because we have to go out to bid for the high school.
Yeah, that's what I'm-
we
yeah,
have to
that's-
encumber all.
And you get recouped.
And then we
You recoup it after, right?
Correct.
That's what I
correct.
was asking.
Yep.
So we're recouping.
There will be a recoup. I don't remember the exact tally. It's several hundred thousand back
Okay.
into the savings, correct?
So we're putting the money out front, but we're going to get back a couple $100,000 or so.
Correct. And
Okay.
we're on target to meet over $200,000 a year savings in
Oh,
electricity.
really?
Yeah.
You've seen that much
yeah.
of a difference? Good.
And then the High West and BCIS portable update. The Superintendent Sarah already gave you that earlier. Contracts being signed. It will be signed this week. Just a few back and forths, and then once that's signed, we'll have a much better date, and we'll be able to lock in a date. But it's several months out. But once that contract's signed, we'll have that.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah, Kathy.
Just for clarification, if you can go back up to line 17, the culinary arts. So this is slated for this fiscal year. Do you anticipate that, once you figure out whether the grant funding's coming, once you figure out and get your bids, do you think this will be in place for the next academic year? Or is that a project that's going to be delayed just because we have so many unknowns? And I bring that up because when you and I walked and we looked at compliance, that was one of my big concerns, was the compliance aspect.
So The grant is delaying us. However, we've done preliminary design, or the architect has done a preliminary design. How robust the project becomes depends on what the grant is going to be. We're at a point right now where there's probably 6 to 8 weeks remaining of design, estimating, and paperwork to get it out to bid, developing that front end. Then we're out to bid for about 4 weeks. If we get this out to bid December, January, I foresee a summer project is not a problem. There is a rooftop unit that would be replaced with this, potentially. If that delays the project, that's fine, because there's going to be plenty of hoods and makeup air in this space anyway, so we may have to phase that out. So I don't foresee any of the equipment delaying a summer 24 project here, as long as we hear back from the state September, October at the latest. If we get this out to bid in January, I think it's comfortable to say we could do it over the summer.
And was that relocating it? Remember when we walked and it was relocating it so that you could potentially open that restaurant space area, the dining space area up to the public?
Correct.
In a secure manner. So that was actually relocating.
That was
as
including
well.
that was doing that.
Yeah.
That was with some grant funding as well.
Okay.
And that's so it's utilizing the old wrestling room.
Right, right.
So yes, that was with moving the space. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mike.
All right,
Excellent
thank you.
presentation. Thank you for coming in and taking the time. It's always good to kind of like see where we're at, because you kind of do it and then it goes out of your mind, and like it's always great to have a kind of a update, because we get asked questions and now we can kind of give out the information. So thank you very much for coming in.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
You too.
Moving on to 6.3, approve supplemental budget appropriation from town council for the administrative assistant for special education, finance, and Medicaid position. Sarah.
Thank you. So this relates back to the position, job description that you approved in section 5. Have been speaking with Mark Milne about using some revenue from the town that can be justified based on Medicaid reimbursement to support an additional administrative assistant in the school administration building. So this motion would approve a request for a supplemental budget appropriation from town council in the amount of $70,657. That's on the high end of the salary range. This would go to the council at their September 21st meeting for a first read, and then October 5th for a second read.
Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Move to approve a request for a supplemental budget appropriation from town council for the administrative assistant for special education finances and Medicaid position in the amount of $70,657.
I'll second that.
Having a motion seconded, voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously.
Thank
Move-
you.
Yep, no problem. Moving on to 6.4, approve administrative assistance for special education, finance, and Medicaid position.
So this would be your approval of establishing the position such that once we have the funding, we could post for it.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the administrative assistant for special education finances and Medicaid position as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion seconded, voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to approve a stipend for an enrichment cluster coordinator at Barnstable Intermediate School.
Thank you. So this is actually, and I'm sorry that a number of us reviewed this and I didn't catch this.
I know, wasn't it?
It's Barnstable Community Innovation School.
You're trying
My
to catch me at
apologies.
8:15. I've been up since 4 this morning, so
My
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be to approve the stipend and the position. You approved the job description previously.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve a stipend for an enrichment cluster coordinator at Barnstable
Nope.
Barnstable Community Innovation School as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second that.
Having a motion seconded, voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 6.6, approve FY24 grants, gifts, and donations. Chris, do we have any?
Yes.
Oh, they're in the packet.
Yep.
So do we have? Do we have any questions about them? Okay, can I get a motion?
Move to approve fiscal year '24 grants, gifts, and donations as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, this is a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to 6.7, there are no budget transfers tonight, so we'll get rid of that. And then 6.8, approve accounts payable warrant FY '22 warrant 10. Can I get either?
Sure. I'll move to approve accounts payable warrant FY '24 warrant number 10 in the amount of $800,801.63.
Second.
Having a motion and seconded, is a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Ayes have it 3-1. Well, 7.1, I'm going to make a motion, move to go into executive session, not to return to in open session to approve a school committee executive session minutes for July 19, 2023, and to discuss strategy and preparation for negotiations with the Barnstable Teachers Association.
A second.
Having a motion and seconded, this is a voice vote. Peter?
Yes.
Andre?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Chair is a yes, passes unanimously. That will conclude our public part of our school committee meeting. Have a safe night and a good night.